Hey, everybody. Welcome into the Heels on the Ground podcast with Ellen Mitchell. I'm your host, Bruce Silverman, along with Ellen Mitchell. It's named after her, so you got to introduce her. And the guest today is Samantha Fitzgerald, who is a probate attorney in the state of Florida. Welcome to you both. It is so great to see your smiling faces.
Thank you, Bruce. Great to be here. And Samantha, thank you so much for being here today.
Great to be here as well.
Ellen, you have worked with Samantha, you know Samantha, so I'll give you the ability to give the introductions to her.
All right. I have had the opportunity to work with Samantha Fitzgerald for several years. She has offices in Broward County, but she does work throughout the state doing probate and estate planning. She is just the best of the best, and I have referred her to clients. She's referred me to clients. I've had the opportunity to work with her personally, and I do know a lot of probate attorneys. So the fact that I choose to work with her personally says a lot about her and her character.
Ellen, I don't think that there is a better introduction than that. Samantha, I would just record this episode, take this episode, edit it, and put it on your business card, put it on your website, put it everywhere.
Thank you, Ellen, for those kind words.
All right, ladies, let's just jump right into this. Obviously, Ellen is your probate realtor in Miami and South Florida, doing an amazing job in taking care of families at a time where they really need somebody in their corner, when they're not always thinking 100% through all the things that are necessary during difficult times in terms of probate and real estate. And that brings up the very first question: what is probate in Florida? And let's look from a legal perspective. Samantha, if you can take this one, what is probate and how exactly should families as well as individuals plan for the inevitability?
Sure, happy to take this. So probate, I always think of it as a title transfer process. Some people think that your estate always goes through probate or it's taxed in probate, and none of that's true. It's really a title transferring process. So if a person dies and they own assets that don't pass some other way, some sort of automatic trigger where they pass to another person, then the only process to pass them along to your heirs or beneficiaries is through the probate process. And probate is a court proceeding. It can be avoidable, but you're in front of a judge and you're in court and you are subject to the rules, not only the written rules, but to the judge's own procedures.
Fair enough. And Ellen, on your side, obviously you have to deal with the law, but you deal a lot with the emotions that come with probate situations. Why don't you speak a little bit about what your role is in this probate scenario?
Sure. So we're using the word probate, and it is a very specific process. But oftentimes when people contact me, it's because somebody has passed, and from the heir's perspective, they don't necessarily know if it has to go through the probate process or if it's left in a trust and it doesn't go through probate. They use probate as a catch-all term where someone in their family has passed, typically someone in their family, and they have inherited property. So there are many things that need to go into that. And the first thing I advise them to do if they have not is to contact an attorney, a probate attorney, to assist them with the legal process. But then we have the real estate. And that includes everything like the front door, the keys to the doors. Usually mom has lived there and she's given keys to people over time. Now the property is vacant. Typically word travels fast. Now everyone knows that the property is vacant. And people that have extra keys wind up helping themselves to some of the personal property. They don't look at it as stealing. It is stealing, but they just say, oh, I always admired this vase. Esther told me one day I could have the vase, and they go in and start removing personal property. So we rekey the property and give the keys to the people that need it today. Oftentimes there's a refrigerator full of food. When your parent passes and you're up north, which is very often, you're not thinking about the food in the refrigerator. You're dealing with the immediate needs, that all of the things that you have to attend to. So I'll often go in, empty out the refrigerator, remind the family of the bills that they have to continue paying, like the condominium association and the utilities. We don't want those things turned off. If there's a car down here, remind them, let's have the car started every couple of weeks so that it doesn't die. So just a lot of the little things that become big things if they're left unattended.
It's really incredible, the service, Ellen, that you provide. It's a very niche part of the real estate market that most realtors don't get involved in. And one of the things that's always impressed me about you is that you have this attention to detail. You have this checklist that says, in this very difficult time, these are the things that need to be taken care of. And Samantha, I've got to believe that on your side, working with a realtor that really understands the probate process makes your job a lot easier, because they're handling all the things that the family really needs to take care of and get a home either ready to sell, to maybe pass on to another relative, or to rent out. And that gives you an opportunity to really focus on the legal aspects of what's coming with probate, with trust, with wills, with the entire legal process that takes place after a homeowner passes away.
Absolutely. Ellen is amazing at her job and really goes the extra mile. Going back to what Ellen mentioned earlier, how the term probate is used very loosely because that's a common term that people know, but they don't understand the structure that the property is in when they call. So it could be a trust, as Ellen mentioned, and it could be some other structure. So for instance, we recently had a case together where it was an enhanced life estate deed. So the family called us talking about probate. They actually even mentioned a trust, but the property wasn't in any of those. It wasn't going through probate and it wasn't in a trust. It passed automatically to what we call the remaindermen, the people that are named in the deed. It's almost like naming a beneficiary on a deed. So this process happens kind of automatically. So it's not in the probate process. And so Ellen came in, and when the family, and this particular family, they live in another state, it's very stressful for them because this person who passed away went into the hospital and they died. And it was unexpected. And so you have a lot of issues swirling around. You have a neighbor that has a key that wasn't very friendly. You have someone who unexpectedly died. The family doesn't understand the structure of the ownership, or who's now the owner, what they do, who has the power to sell the property. And then on top of all of that craziness, and Ellen stepped in immediately. I knew she was the right woman for the job. She immediately jumped in and she rekeyed the property. So, that's something that oftentimes has to happen immediately. Because, as Ellen mentioned, people go in there and they start looting the place, and it's, or worse, sometimes you could have a squatter even. So you don't want any of that, but there could be valuable items inside, that are at risk. In this particular case, there was a dog left behind. And Ellen has a great story about Bella. It was very traumatizing and we weren't sure what to do, but Ellen stepped in, and Ellen, you can tell what you did with Bella if you'd like.
Ellen is one of the biggest dog lovers I know.
And I didn't even know that when I brought her in, but I just knew that she was the right person to get it all done.
This was so crazy. So as Samantha mentioned, the next door neighbor had a key. And when the woman went to the hospital, she gave the neighbor the key and the dog. She thought it was going to be a round trip visit to the hospital. She didn't realize that it was going to be permanent. And when she passed, the neighbor said he would not return the keys and would not return the dog. And so the family up north didn't know what to do. They said it was their aunt that passed, that the aunt had actually left Bella, the dog, to a different neighbor. So when we went to rekey the property, my son, who's a realtor, met the locksmith. When they opened the door, there was Bella. She was not in the next door neighbor's unit. She was in the now vacant unit.
Did not see that coming.
Didn't see that coming. So
neither did Kevin.
Yeah, neither did Kevin. So Kevin takes Bella down to the neighbor that's supposed to inherit the dog. The neighbor doesn't want the dog. And we were like, oh my gosh, what do we do? We just can't take this dog to the pound. It's a beautiful dog. The woman who died obviously loved her very much. There were dog toys everywhere and dog beds. And so Kevin brought Bella home. I put Bella on Facebook and said, I would like to find someone that's either personally known to me or that someone that I know knows the person, because unfortunately there are some bad people out there who will take advantage of those situations. Within 5 minutes, I had a message from a very good friend of mine that his father had lost his dog about a year ago and was they had been looking for about 6 months for a dog. And my friend came over that evening with his elderly father and his son, and Bella fell in love with them, and they fell in love with Bella and adopted her. And we were able to get all the documents and her medical records and everything over. So Bella is very happily living with her new owner in a beautiful home. And I followed up a couple of times. They've sent me great pictures of her. And I was able to let the family, of course, I coordinated all of this with the family. They didn't know what to do. And so it was a really great result for everybody. And we think that the woman that passed would be very, very happy to know that Bella is being very loved and taken care of in the way she would have, the way she loved her and took care of her.
It's a heartwarming story in a very difficult time. The fact that you and your son, your team, were able to do what I know is not in the job description is pretty incredible. And Samantha, that must have made your job so much easier as well.
Oh yeah, we were thrilled. It was a great outcome and everything worked out so well.
Let's change the conversation just a little bit from some of the trials and tribulations that take place after someone passes away to how to avoid a probate situation, so that I would assume, tell me if I'm wrong, Samantha, that one of the ways to avoid probate is to have all the affairs in order and tidied up so there is a natural plan to follow.
Definitely, but just having documents in place doesn't necessarily avoid the probate process. A lot of people think that, oh, I have a trust or I have a will, and so my estate won't go through probate, but that's completely untrue. So having a will doesn't avoid probate at all. Like, in no possible way does it avoid probate. It merely controls the process if you go to probate. The will says who gets what and who's in charge of the estate, called the personal representative in Florida. But in no way does a will avoid probate. A trust is a tool that we use to avoid probate, but just having the document doesn't by itself avoid the probate process. Probate is determined at the time of death based upon the assets that you own. So some ways that you can avoid probate, as we were just discussing, an enhanced life estate deed, or really any kind of life estate deed, will avoid probate for that particular property. It won't go through probate. It will pass to the people named as the remainderment in the deed, provided they are still alive. So I have actually seen many times where the remainderment predeceases the property owner. And that's a problem because then you have a probate for that remainderment. Other ways to avoid probate for non-real estate assets is to have beneficiaries designated on financial accounts, which includes life insurance, retirement accounts, brokerage accounts, checking, savings. For some reason, people think that checking accounts are special and they don't need beneficiary designations, but they're just like any other financial asset. They will go through probate if there's no beneficiary designation. Or joint ownership. So joint ownership of anything will avoid probate, assuming it's a joint ownership with a right of survivorship. With bank accounts, that's presumed. They're pretty much always opened as joint tenants with rights of survivorship. But real estate is not so. The default is tenants in common, meaning that each joint owner owns their share, and when they die, their half or whatever share they own goes through the probate process. So it has to have that special language on the deed, joint tenants with rights of survivorship, or you have to be a married couple. It's better if the deed says you're a married couple, but technically that's not required. So if you're a married couple, joint tenants with rights of survivorship on real estate, or if it's some sort of life estate deed, or if the property is titled in a trust. All of those situations will avoid the property passing through probate. But as Ellen said, you could still have, a trust arrangement or a life estate deed where it's got to go through some sort of process of transfer to somebody because somebody died. But you're outside of the court system, which is a good thing.
Ellen, now from a realtor's perspective, obviously the law is the law, but what can you do to make sure that you don't get too deep into the listing or the sale of a property before everything is buttoned up on the legal side with Samantha?
So I'm always going to get my guidance from the attorney, knowing that they're the professional. So if it's going through probate, that doesn't mean necessarily that we cannot list the property, but there will need to be special language in the listing agreement. There will need to be special language in the sales contract. Depending on whether it's homestead or not, it may or may not have to go through a creditor period. So all of those things, I'm going to be deferring to the probate attorney to advise me in terms of what's in a reasonable time frame for closing. The biggest mistake I see people making is not allowing enough time for closing and the buyer not being educated that this is a probate property. It's subject to probate court approval. It could be approved in 30, 45 days, but it may not. And then everybody is scrambling, blowing up the attorney's phone, saying we have to close, we have to close, we have to close, or we're going to lose the buyer. Where if they had taken care and done their due diligence up front, they could have managed the process, efficiently and avoided the stress for all of the parties as they were getting towards the time for closing.
Sounds like not only do we have to have a probate attorney like Samantha involved, but it sounds like we also have to have a title company, a title attorney involved as well. I think we should do episodes on title attorneys as well. What do you think about that, Ellen?
Well, I was definitely going to suggest that we have Sharon Walker, real estate attorney, who deals with this a lot on a future episode. But it's really incumbent on the realtor. The realtor is typically the one that's communicating, actually almost always the one that's communicating with the other realtor that's involved. So it's really incumbent on the realtor to provide the expectations, manage the expectations up front to avoid any unnecessary stress, down the road. Samantha, would you?
Totally agree. 100%. Planning is absolutely key, and communication and setting those expectations avoids lots of trouble and problems. One thing I would add there is before it even gets down the road to knowing it's in this probate situation or trust situation or whatever it's in, is really good realtors like Ellen we'll check on the title, because it's shocking that people don't even know what the title says. Somebody dies and everybody presumes the property has to go through probate. They just, assume that that's the natural course of things. And the first step is pulling up the deed. We even get calls from people looking to hire us, and they say, I need to schedule a consultation. So-and-so died, and they own a home or a condo, a house, something, and it needs to go through probate. And it doesn't even get past our receptionist, because she pulls up the deed from the property appraiser, and we see, oh, the property is titled in a trust. Oh, the property is jointly held with rights of survivorship. Oh, the property it has a life estate deed. It doesn't need to go through probate. So that's the first step, is even figuring out how is the property owned, and then we move on.
Perfect. And a perfect time for us to take a pause on this episode, get ready to do a new episode. And when we do, Samantha and Ellen will be back, and we will start with the conversation of, can I sell a house during the probate period? So that's the end of this one, but there's a lot more to come. So do not go away. Do not fret. Samantha and Ellen will be back the next time you go to pull up another episode of Your Heels on the Ground with Ellen Mitchell. Ellen, Samantha, I'm Bruce. We will see you next time.
Thanks,
Thank
Bruce.
you.